That bottle in your shower, the one you've used for years, the brand your mother trusted, the one that sits there like an old friend you never question. It feels like routine, like safety, like something that could never hurt you. It might contain formaldehyde, the same chemical used to preserve dead bodies, hormone disruptors banned in 144 countries, synthetic ingredients causing bald patches and chemical burns. I spent weeks investigating the biggest shampoo brands in America. What I found will make you throw out half your bathroom. These billion-dollar companies are hiding ingredients that damage more than they repair, and they've been doing it for years while collecting your money. In the next 15 minutes, I'll reveal the 7 shampoo brands that are damaging your hair and scalp with toxic chemicals, deceptive labels, and predatory marketing. By the end, you'll know what to avoid and what to actually use, because number 1 wasn't some obscure bargain bottle hidden on the bottom shelf. It was a brand people defended like family. Brand number 1, DevaCurl. DevaCurl didn't just sell shampoo, it sold identity. For years, it positioned itself as the solution for curly hair in the United States. You could find it at Ulta, professional salons, Amazon, and specialty beauty retailers nationwide. It wasn't cheap, and that price reinforced the message. This is specialized, intentional, and safe. Entire online communities formed around it. Routines were shared. Techniques were passed down. Trust was absolute. Then the reports started to surface. At first, quietly. Increased shedding, persistent scalp irritation, hair snapping where it never had before. People noticed more hair in the drain after a few weeks, then clumps after a few months. Some described burning or tightness on the scalp that wouldn't go away. What made this different wasn't a single complaint, it was volume and consistency. By 2020, DevaCurl became the subject of consumer litigation in the United States. The brand ultimately faced a class action dispute that resulted in a reported settlement of approximately $5.2 million. That number matters. Companies don't reach 7-figure settlements over nothing. A settlement doesn't automatically mean guilt, but it does mean risk was acknowledged and silence was no longer an option. The core issue wasn't one toxic ingredient. It was the gap between how safe the brand was perceived to be and how some bodies actually responded to it. Conditioning agents, fragrances, and film-forming ingredients that feel luxurious on healthy scalps can become a problem on sensitive or inflamed skin. When irritation builds slowly, people don't blame the product. They blame stress, hormones, age, everything except the bottle they trust. The health impact isn't just cosmetic. Chronic scalp irritation can disrupt the skin barrier. Inflammation can increase shedding. Hair loss affects confidence, mental health, and daily behavior. People stop wearing their hair down. They avoid mirrors. And the longer it takes to connect cause and effect, the deeper that damage goes. If irritation, burning, or shedding increases within weeks or months of use, stopping matters. Switching to a fragrance-free minimal formula for 2 to 4 weeks can reveal whether the scalp is recovering. Hair tells the truth when you let it reset. Now to brand number 2, because not all risks come wrapped in luxury. Brand number 2, Alberto VO5. VO5 is everywhere in America. Walmart, Dollar Tree, drugstores, often priced between $1 and $2 a bottle. It's marketed as practical, no-nonsense, affordable hair care. And for many households, affordability isn't optional, it's survival. The concern with VO5 isn't hidden lawsuits or premium betrayal, it's formulation economics. At that price point, products rely on aggressive cleansing agents and heavy fragrance to create the sensation of cleanliness. That squeaky feel people associate with being clean can actually signal that the scalp's protective oils have been stripped away. Over time, this can lead to dryness, itching, flaking, and hair that breaks easily, especially in older adults or anyone with a naturally sensitive scalp. Breakage gets mistaken for hair loss. Irritation gets mistaken for dandruff. And people respond by washing more often, deepening the cycle. There's no court settlement here, no dramatic headline, just a quiet, everyday risk that disproportionately affects people with fewer choices. The path forward isn't shame, it's strategy. Reducing wash frequency, using a gentle conditioner consistently, alternating with a mild, fragrance-free shampoo once or twice a week. Small changes can restore balance without blowing a budget. 2 brands, 2 very different price points, same lesson. Trust the scalp before you trust the label. By the time you reach brand number 3, the pattern should start to feel uncomfortable, because this isn't about rare reactions anymore. This is about how the system is designed. Brand number 3, Aussie. Aussie is one of the most recognizable shampoo brands in the United States. Bright bottles, playful names, a tropical scent that hits you before the cap is fully open. You can buy it almost anywhere. Target, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens for around $5 to $7 a bottle. It's marketed as fun, carefree, and harmless. And that's exactly why people don't question it. The concern with Aussie isn't a single scandal or one explosive lawsuit. It's something quieter, and in some ways more troubling. What you don't know when you read the label. Take a look at the ingredient list. One word appears again and again: fragrance. In the United States, federal labeling rules allow companies to list fragrance as a single term, even though it can represent dozens of individual chemicals. This loophole exists because fragrance formulas are treated as trade secrets. That means consumers are legally blocked from knowing exactly what creates that smell. According to FDA guidance on cosmetic labeling, companies are not required to disclose the specific components of fragrance mixtures. That's not a conspiracy. That's policy. But policy doesn't equal safety for everyone, especially for people with asthma, migraines, eczema, or sensitive scalps. For them, fragrance isn't cosmetic, it's a trigger. Many users report headaches, scalp tightness, itching, or burning sensations after repeated use of heavily fragranced shampoos. These symptoms don't always appear on day one. Sometimes they surface after 3 to 6 weeks, once exposure accumulates. That delay makes cause and effect harder to spot, and the bottle stays in the shower longer than it should. Repeated irritation can weaken the scalp's protective barrier. A compromised barrier loses moisture faster, becomes more reactive, and is more prone to inflammation. Hair becomes dry, brittle, and easier to break. People see more hair fall and assume it's stress or age. Rarely do they suspect the scent they've been breathing in every morning. Choosing fragrance-free or low-fragrance products removes an entire category of unknowns. If symptoms ease within 2 weeks, the answer was already there. Now let's move to brand number 4, because this one operates under a different kind of trust. Brand number 4, Selsun Blue. Selsun Blue isn't marketed as beauty, it's marketed as medicine. An over-the-counter dandruff shampoo available across the U.S., often priced between $7 and $12, and frequently recommended for flaking, itching, and seborrheic dermatitis. And to be clear, it works. For many people, flakes disappear fast. Products designed for treatment aren't meant for daily indefinite use. But that nuance often gets lost. People use Selsun Blue like a regular shampoo every day, sometimes for months or even years. When symptoms return after stopping, they assume the condition is worsening. In reality, the scalp may be reacting to overuse. There have been consumer lawsuits in the U.S. alleging hair loss and scalp irritation associated with medicated dandruff shampoos, including selenium-based formulas. Again, lawsuits don't equal universal harm, but they do signal patterns worth examining. There's also an international contrast that raises questions. In the European Union, zinc pyrithione, a common anti-dandruff ingredient used for decades, was banned in cosmetic products starting March 1, 2022. Different regulators, different conclusions, but the difference alone should trigger curiosity. If one region decides the risk-benefit balance no longer holds, consumers deserve to know why. Overuse of medicated shampoos can lead to excessive dryness, rebound flaking, irritation, and inflammation. The scalp becomes dependent. Stop using it, and symptoms come back worse. Not because the condition is incurable, but because balance was never restored. Using treatment shampoos 1 to 2 times per week, rotating with a gentle cleanser, and reassessing after 14 to 21 days. If redness, burning, or thick scaling persists, that's not a shampoo problem anymore. That's a medical conversation. 2 more brands, 2 different strategies. Same underlying issue. When products are either too opaque or too aggressive, the scalp pays the price. By the time we get to brand number 5, the story shifts from quiet risk to public fallout. This wasn't subtle. This wasn't buried in fine print. This one exploded. Brand number 5, Win. Win didn't enter the U.S. market like a normal shampoo. It arrived as a revolution. Late-night television, glossy infomercials, celebrity endorsements. A promise that sounded almost too gentle to question. No shampoo at all, just a cleansing conditioner. For years, millions of bottles were sold across America. People stocked up. Some used it daily for 6 months, a year, even longer, believing they were finally being kind to their hair. Then the complaints turned into headlines. Consumers began reporting excessive hair shedding, scalp irritation, and bald patches that didn't recover. Not a few strands, not seasonal shedding, but handfuls. Enough to panic, enough to document, enough to seek legal help. The situation escalated to the point where Win's parent company reached a reported settlement of approximately $26.3 million in the United States. That number changes everything. You don't reach 8 figures because of isolated misunderstandings. A settlement of that size reflects volume, consistency, and risk management. Again, settlement does not mean a scientific verdict, but it does mean the problem could no longer be ignored. The core issue with Wen wasn't malicious intent. It was design. Cleansing conditioners can work for certain hair types, but for many scalps, especially oily, inflamed, or sensitive ones, they don't cleanse deeply enough. Residue builds up, follicles get congested, inflammation simmers quietly, and because the product is marketed as gentle, users often increase usage instead of stopping, day after day, week after week. Health consequences follow that pattern. Chronic irritation, increased shedding due to inflammation, hair that doesn't regrow because the scalp environment never stabilizes, and the emotional toll is severe. Hair loss tied to a product you trusted feels personal. It feels like betrayal. The lesson here is simple but uncomfortable. Trends don't replace testing. Popularity doesn't equal compatibility. And gentle without context can still cause harm. The solution requires restraint. If buildup, itching, or shedding increases after 2 to 4 weeks, stop. Switch to a true cleanser. Allow the scalp to reset. And if shedding persists beyond 8 to 12 weeks, professional evaluation matters. Now to brand number 6, where the damage isn't explosive but ideological. Brand number 6, Love Beauty and Planet. This brand didn't sell transformation, it sold values. Sustainability, kindness, naturally derived ingredients, earth tones, ethical language. Owned by a multinational corporation and sold widely across the U.S. In Target, Walmart, and drugstores, it positioned itself as the moral alternative on the shelf. The concern here centers on language. Several lawsuits in the United States have challenged how the brand used phrases like naturally derived and plant-based, arguing that these claims created a misleading impression about what was actually inside the bottle. This isn't about one ingredient being dangerous. It's about perception versus reality. There is no universal legal definition of natural in cosmetics. Percentages can be framed generously, and consumers often assume those words mean fewer synthetics, fewer irritants, fewer risks. But without full transparency, that assumption can be wrong. For sensitive individuals, the health impact mirrors what we've seen before: scalp irritation, itching, contact dermatitis, and hair that weakens over time. Not because the product is inherently toxic, but because expectations prevent early warning signs from being taken seriously. The conclusion here isn't anti-natural branding, it's anti-ambiguity. When values become marketing tools instead of measurable standards, consumers lose their ability to make informed decisions. Ignore the front label, read the back, watch how your body responds over 14 to 21 days. And remember this: words don't heal, formulations do. 2 brands, 2 very different failures. One collapsed under legal weight, the other under semantic fog. And both remind us of the same truth: when trust replaces verification, risk grows quietly. By brand number 7, the pattern is no longer subtle. This is where everything converges: mass distribution, professional imagery, and quiet controversy. Brand number 7, Tresemme. Tresemme is everywhere in the United States: Walmart, Target, CVS, Walgreens, salon aisles. It's positioned as professional-grade hair care at a drugstore price, usually between $5 and $8 per bottle. The branding leans heavily on words like keratin, repair, and salon results. For years, it's been treated as a safe middle ground, better than bargain brands, cheaper than luxury. That assumption deserves scrutiny. Multiple consumer lawsuits in the U.S. have alleged that certain Tresemme lines were associated with scalp irritation and hair shedding, specifically pointing to the presence of DMDM-hydantoin, a preservative that can release small amounts of formaldehyde over time. Formaldehyde itself is a well-documented irritant, and while the amounts involved in cosmetics are regulated, sensitivity varies dramatically from person to person. This is where nuance matters. No credible authority says DMDM-hydantoin causes hair loss in everyone. Even watchdog organizations acknowledge that direct causation hasn't been proven across populations, but irritation doesn't need universal proof to be real. For someone with a sensitive scalp, repeated exposure can lead to inflammation. Inflammation disrupts the follicle environment, and when follicles are inflamed long enough, shedding increases. The legal disputes didn't hinge on dramatic poisoning claims. They centered on transparency and risk communication. When a product markets itself as strengthening and repairing, users are less likely to suspect it when problems start. They wait. They push through discomfort, Weeks turn into 2 or 3 months, and by the time they stop, damage has compounded. Health impacts here follow a familiar arc. Scalp redness, burning or itching after washing, flaking that wasn't there before, hair snapping during brushing. Emotional stress builds alongside physical symptoms, and the most dangerous part is delay, because people don't want to believe a trusted mainstream product could be contributing. The practical response isn't panic, it's decisiveness. If irritation or shedding increases within 30 to 60 days, stop. Switching earlier prevents long-term disruption. And that brings us to the other half of this section, because awareness without alternatives just creates fear. Now a recommendation, not a miracle, not a cure, just a quieter option. Recommended brand number 1, Vanicream Shampoo. Vanicream doesn't rely on storytelling. It doesn't promise transformation. It's a brand developed specifically for sensitive skin, widely available across the United States, often priced around $9 to $12. You'll find it in drugstores, online retailers, and sometimes in dermatology offices. What makes it different is what's missing. No added fragrance, no masking scents, a short functional ingredient list designed to minimize irritation. Dermatology-focused publications and consumer health outlets frequently list Vanicream among the safest options for people with eczema, contact dermatitis, or reactive skin. Not because it's powerful, but because it's predictable. That predictability is healing. When the scalp isn't constantly reacting, inflammation decreases, itching subsides. The skin barrier has a chance to recover over 2 to 4 weeks. Shedding related to irritation often slows. And perhaps most importantly, users regain trust in cause and effect. You change one variable. You watch the response. The body gives feedback. The benefit here isn't dramatic shine or volume. It's stability. Fewer flare-ups, less guesswork, less fear every time you wash your hair. After 7 brands that failed in different ways through hype, ambiguity, aggression, or silence, this is the reset point. Not because Vanicream is perfect, but because it respects limits. And sometimes the healthiest choice is the one that does less. After everything exposed so far, this part matters more than it looks like, because awareness without direction turns into anxiety. And the goal here was never to make people afraid of their own bathroom. It was to show that safer choices actually exist if you know what you're looking for. These next 2 brands aren't perfect. No product is. But compared to what we've already uncovered, they operate with fewer unknowns, fewer red flags, and far more restraint. Recommended brand number 2, Kristen S Extra Gentle Shampoo. Kristen S is a mainstream brand in the United States, widely available at Target, Ulta, and online retailers. Price-wise, it usually falls between $10 and $14, which places it squarely in the accessible but intentional category. Not bargain bin cheap, not luxury exclusive, that middle ground matters. The reason this specific line stands out is its design philosophy. The extra gentle formula was created for sensitive scalps people who experienced burning, itching, or excessive dryness with standard shampoos. It intentionally avoids aggressive cleansing agents and leans toward a milder surfactant system. The scent is present but noticeably lighter than the heavily fragranced brands we discussed earlier. Consumer beauty publications and dermatology-adjacent reviews in the U.S. have repeatedly listed this formula among safer options for reactive scalps. Not because it promises repair, growth, or transformation, but because it's less likely to provoke inflammation over time. Health impact here is subtle but meaningful. When irritation decreases, the scalp's barrier function improves. Moisture retention stabilizes. Hair becomes less brittle, which reduces breakage mistaken for hair loss. Over 3 to 6 weeks, many users report less itching and a more predictable wash-to-wash response. The conclusion with Kristen S is balance. It's not stripped down to the point of being clinical, but it avoids the excesses that create risk. For people transitioning away from harsher products, that balance can prevent shock to the scalp. Now for recommended brand number 3, which represents the other end of the spectrum. Necessaire, the shampoo. Necessaire is a premium personal care brand based in the United States, often priced around $28 to $32 per bottle. It's not a casual purchase, and that's intentional. The brand markets itself less like beauty and more like skincare, because the scalp is skin. What differentiates Necessaire is its formulation discipline. The shampoo is positioned as hypoallergenic, designed to minimize common irritants, and intentionally low in fragrance. The ingredient list is shorter than most mass-market shampoos, and the brand emphasizes compatibility with sensitive and compromised skin. In multiple U.S. based beauty and wellness reviews, Necessaire has been highlighted as a strong option for people with recurring scalp issues, itching, redness, or flare-ups that don't respond well to fragranced or medicated products. Again, not a cure, but a calmer baseline. The health benefit here is long-term stability. When the scalp isn't constantly reacting, inflammatory cycles quiet down. Over 4 to 8 weeks, users often report fewer flare-ups and less need to rotate products constantly. That consistency matters. It reduces experimentation fatigue. It reduces stress. And stress, ironically, is one of the biggest contributors to hair shedding. The conclusion for these two brands is simple. Healing doesn't come from intensity. It comes from predictability, from knowing what's not in the bottle, from giving the body time to respond instead of overwhelming it with claims. After everything uncovered from multi-million-dollar settlements to regulatory contrasts across countries, this is what a safer path looks like. Fewer promises, fewer surprises, more listening. One part remains, and that's where everything comes together. If there's one thing this investigation made clear, it's this. The danger was never a single ingredient, a single brand, or a single bottle. The real risk was silence. Silence created by familiarity. Silence reinforced by marketing. Silence that makes people doubt their own bodies when something feels wrong. A cult favorite that ended in a $5.2 million settlement. A cleansing conditioner that collapsed under $3 million of consumer claims. Mass market shampoos priced at $1 to $7 that rely on intensity instead of balance. Medicinal formulas used daily for months or years, never meant to be permanent. Green language with no legal definition. Fragrance listed as a single word that can legally hide dozens of chemicals. And across all of it, the same result. Irritation first, confusion second, hair loss last. None of this happens overnight. That's why it's so easy to miss. Most people don't wake up bald. They wake up shedding a little more than usual. Their scalp feels tight. Their hair snaps more easily. The drain clogs faster. And because these changes happen over 30, 60, sometimes 90 days, they feel like aging. Stress, hormones, anything except the product they've been using every single morning. The shift happens when awareness replaces habit. When you stop asking, what does this promise? And start asking, how does my body respond? When you give your scalp 2 to 4 weeks without fragrance overload. When you stop cycling through products chasing fixes and start letting inflammation calm down. The brands we recommended aren't heroes. They're simply quieter, more predictable, less interested in selling a fantasy, and more focused on not getting in the way of healing. And sometimes, that's enough. So here's the action step, simple but powerful. After this video, go to your bathroom. Pick up the bottle you use most often. Turn it around. Read the ingredient list slowly. Ask yourself one question. If this caused irritation, would I even know why? If the answer is no, that's not your fault. But it is your responsibility now that you see it. If you've experienced unexplained shedding, itching, burning, or flaking, especially over multiple months, share your story. Not to blame, not to panic, but to break the silence that keeps these cycles going. And if you want more investigations like this into everyday products that live quietly in our homes, stay here. Subscribe, because trust should be earned, not assumed. And your health should never depend on a label you were never meant to understand.